All right, folks, welcome back to the show. It's time for another episode of the Agency Freedom Podcast. We help insurance professionals move from captivity to freedom. And this is a fun episode because I have to dig a little bit deeper. Our guest here is none other than Jackson Fregeau, the co-founder and CEO of Quandri, which is a very interesting company headquartered in Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada. And they are leading the charge in certain elements of the AI game. Now, why do I say I have to dig a little bit deeper? Because my man Jackson is an experienced podcast guest. He's been on a lot of episodes of shows that you and I both know and are familiar with. What does that mean for me? Well, I've got to give you something different. So we're not going to have just another episode with Jackson Fregeau. We're going to get into a little bit more current events, maybe get Jackson to spill a little bit of hot takes, like get some fresh opinions from him on things that he may not be freely volunteering unless a specific question was asked. Jackson, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, glad to be here, James. Thanks for having me.
You know, AI is the buzzword of 2024. Generative AI, if I'm being specific. Second half of 23, too, to some extent. I feel like VA and virtual employees had a good run for 2 or 3 years of being the really hot topic that everybody seemed to be talking about. Generative AI is without a doubt in the spotlight right now, thanks in part to OpenAI and their ChatGPT 3.5 and 4 platforms and
hmm
all the iterations of generative imaging and, I mean, really just some fascinating stuff happening in the world of generative AI. First question I'm going to have for you after we talk about the biography stuff, your biography and Quandri's biography, just set this aside, is how in the world do we make sense of such an innovative, disruptive technology in the context of an industry that is very well known for being not the friendliest place for innovation? So tuck that aside. Let's talk about your biography. What's the Jackson Fregeau story? How in the world did you come to be a co-founder of a generative AI company? And then we'll talk about Quandary after that. But take us away, man. What's the Jackson story?
Yeah, sounds great, and the two are linked. Quandri's biography definitely ties in with my own. So I grew up in a small town in northwestern Ontario, a small town called Kenora, basically a town of about 15,000 people. Um, in a beautiful area of Ontario where there's a lot of really beautiful lakes around, kind of cottage country type place. Grew up there, um, and I was always really interested actually in entrepreneurship. So I found a quandary with my brother Jameson. We started the business together, and by virtue of our parents, we both love to read. We always read a lot when we were younger and going through high school and things like that. And books that really appealed to both of us from an early age were always biographies, right? Reading amazing stories of people who had gone to do great things, whether those were, political bios like, presidents or, Nelson Mandela, like biographies like that, I always found amazing. Or business leaders like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, biographies like that of what they've been able to build and the impact they've been able to have on the world. So that always really sort of appealed to both of us from an early age. But grew up in Kenora. Played a lot of sports, spent a lot of time out on the lake. Um, I realized that I wanted to go and pursue something in business. I had a hunch that it was entrepreneurship, but that wasn't really something that, growing up in a small town that you sort of see a lot of people around you doing, right? The successful people are the sort of doctors, the lawyers, things like that. So that wasn't really a sort of model that I had in my head. It was something, I'd read about, and I think that sort of gave me the possibility of it, but it wasn't really a model of like the people around you. And I knew that I wanted to go far away for school. I loved my family, love where I came from, still spend a lot of time back there, but I wanted to sort of open up my horizons a little bit and go far away from home and have a bit of a new start. So I went out west for school, did my undergrad at the University of Calgary, and it was then that I realized that sort of entrepreneurship was what I really wanted to do. Um, I had always had that in the back of my mind, but I actually remember pretty clearly one day reading The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I'm not sure if
Yep.
you've read that.
Oh yeah.
Um, Amazing. I really love Tim Ferriss, and I've listened to a lot of his stuff, read a lot of his stuff. But I remember that book specifically, like really opening my eyes of thinking, oh, this is possible. It's possible to go and do something like this. And I didn't want to go work 4 hours a week. Like that's not what I was driving for. But the sort of independence and self-reliance, and that you can go do something, dramatically different from all these other models of a career that other people have that maybe you've seen in your personal life. So that was really exciting, and I think that's where it really kicked it off. That's something I could go do. Um, so after my undergrad, I actually went and worked for a startup. I was the third employee. I was basically, this wasn't my title, but I was effectively the EA to the CEO at this company. I started by, helping write process documents. I did some financial modeling. I started hiring a few people. I started managing some clients. We were doing kind of a combination of a few different things, but really focused around, sales automation, lead generation, that type of thing. And I ended up leading operations in that company. So I was the COO there when I was about 24, something like that. We
Wow.
had, we had a team of about 30 folks, 35 by the time I left, and like built a pretty good business. But I really had a drive to do something on my own. I was, to put it bluntly, like sort of sick of working for somebody at the time, and I had a great boss, great mentor, gave me tons of opportunity, but I was interested in sort of seeing what I could do on my own. And it was at that point that I was out of school. Jameson, my brother, so I did a finance degree, and Jameson did a software engineering degree. My brother, and he was actually still in his engineering degree at this point, and we were both pretty interested in doing something together. And we'd been kind of bouncing around a few different ideas of building something together, but nothing really stuck. We dipped our toes into a few things, but nothing really had what we thought as the sort of scale or impact that we wanted. We had a couple ideas. We're like, oh yeah, this could be a cool little business. For instance, one of my favorites was an app actually where, let's say, James, you are wanting to go out for dinner, right? And you're like, we could have sushi, but also could have Greek. But I don't want to go through the rigmarole of like picking a restaurant, of opening up Google Maps or like going through Zomato and like finding all these restaurants you could go to and needing to make that decision. You could just like put in sushi, put in Greek, put in like the dollar sign that you wanted, and like it would pick a restaurant for you. So we thought that was pretty clever and would be fun. But like the sort of scale that you could build something like that and like the impact that it could have wasn't that exciting to us. And we wanted something sort of bigger and meatier.
Yeah.
So in that initial startup that I was working at, I actually built an automation program in that company. Portion of my team was doing a lot of high volume repetitive data entry work, so I built an automation program to solve a lot of those problems that we had there. And after doing that, really sort of had my eyes open by like how valuable that could be, and by how many businesses could benefit from that type of technology that are not using it.
Yep.
There were no solutions for that, for like small, medium-sized businesses, even mid-market businesses. So Jameson and I, at this point, we like started talking about it and really started to get excited about it, and decided to start Quandri to sort of experiment around that, of really, at the time, what we were calling robots as a service for sort of SMB and mid-market companies.
Mm-hmm.
When we started, Jameson was actually still in school. He actually did a co-op period with the company we had just started and got school credit for it while he was still doing his undergrad.
Genius.
And I was still working full time when we did that. And then after sort of the first nine months or so, is when we both went into it full time and really tackled it. But that's sort of how we kind of came to the idea of Quandri, and then there have been various iterations of it since then. that's really how we got to that point.
I just caught myself taking a drink from this glass here. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you will get a good laugh at my expense. I realize that I'm drinking out of David Carruthers' podcast
I
glass that he sent me after I was a
was gonna
guest on
say
his show.
I thought I recognized that glass.
Oh, you definitely do recognize that glass. You
Yeah,
probably have one yourself.
there it is. There it is.
So shout out to you, David. Thanks for always being you, man. So Jackson, I gotta say the genius of the right place at the right time, or maybe even serendipity, not even genius. That's not something that any of us can take credit for, right? You know, you were born in the year that you were born. You were born to the family and the location that you were born, whether you believe in God or divine providence, whatever your faith background is. Nevertheless, you found yourself at a certain place at a certain time with an opportunity to do something that wasn't already done and wasn't already saturated in the industries that you chose to serve. I love reflecting on the thing of right place at the right time
Mm.
with the right interest, the right skill set, all of the ingredients that have to come together to form whatever it is that gets founded. I mean, you pick the company, any company. You take a look at founders and co-founders, and it's like, I absolutely love a good biography because it usually tells the story of all of these ingredients coming together and formulating this thing, whatever the company is. In your case, Quandri, you know, for you and Jameson, your brother, to have an interest and complementary skill sets, finance and software engineering. I don't know if you could cherry pick a better set of skills for two co-founders to have. One who's really good at operations, literally served as the COO of a startup. You think that might come in handy when you're doing the Quandri thing. And then your brother, who is literally spending years developing his software engineering skills at a time when generative AI is just becoming a thing. I mean, wow, what a cool opportunity.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'm really glad you brought up sort of serendipity and like timing and luck, because I think often, you talk about the story of the company and sort of how you got to where you came to, and it's easy for it to sound like preordained and a series of like intelligent strategic decisions that got you there. But I think like 30%, 50% of our success, and I think a lot of people's success is that, right, is the serendipitous nature of it, and like being in the right place at the right time. And for us, like, we're like, there's all of the sort of ingredients that need to come together to put you in that place at that time, right, with the skill set. And like you mentioned, Jameis and I having very, very complementary skill sets, but really strong like value alignment too, which I think is really, really important. But then also like the right place, right time of the company.
Yep.
And I think for Quandri, like when we started, that was before generative AI. That was before AI was as buzzy as it is now. And that was also before a lot of startups were looking at the brokerage and agency space.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I'm sure you've seen that over the last,
when
3-4 years.
was that? What year was that? Just so I know for context.
Yeah, so late 2020.
Okay. So
Yeah.
RPA is very much on the scene. It has been for a long time. RPA is in full bloom. So I'm guessing you guys started in some sort of iteration of RPA before generative AI, right?
Very, very much so. Yeah, very
Okay.
much so. Yeah, so
Robotic
when
process automation, for those of you that haven't heard the acronym RPA, I think most of our listening audience is familiar with that acronym, but I always like to clarify just to be on the safe side.
yeah, and when we started, like we were, and sort of started out of a gap that we saw like the large RPA companies not filling, right? Like a UiPath or Automation Anywhere, where it takes, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, potentially engaging a third-party consultant to like spin up some of that technology.
Yep.
And like SMBs, mid-market companies, like they don't have the time, resources, nor really the appetite for that type of engagement. Like what they need is something that solves a problem for them,
Yep.
quickly. So when we started, we really started as a, vertical RPA for the insurance industry, and we sort of experimented across different industries to start to figure out where the best fit would be. Worked with our first couple of brokerages in Canada, pivoted to insurance pretty quickly just because we saw how big the pain was and really how big the opportunity to come and help was. but started initially as really like a vertical sort of productized RPA, prepackaged robots that can be deployed very quickly to solve your existing problems in a very robust way.
Nice.
Since then, we've now been growing and obviously adapting the business, and we're actually not. I think this is kind of interesting. This ties into the first question that you were asking, James, around AI and insurance and innovation and all of that. We're actually not using generative AI in our core products right now.
Okay. My
We've
mistake. I
experimented.
apologize.
No, not a problem. And I think people often assume we do. We actually don't, and it's kind of for an interesting reason in that, with our products right now, we've experimented a lot with generative AI, but we haven't actually been able to drive the accuracy that we need for our technology to deliver like exceptional value for customers. So for us, like for an agency to rely on our technology to solve like really big, important, valuable problems for them, as an example, reviewing all of their renewals and flagging, changes, risks, upsell opportunities, cross-sell opportunities, all that type of stuff. They need an exceptional level of accuracy, right? Otherwise, they're not going to trust our technology. They're going to trust, a person to do that. We
Yep.
can't get, a 99% plus accuracy rate through large language models. You can get, high 80s, you can get low 90s. It's really good for lots of use cases, but for what we do, we need like an exceptional high level of accuracy. So we sort of combine, multiple different approaches where we use RPA, we use OCR, we use machine learning, use different approaches in order to pull all of that together to get that extremely high level of accuracy.
Man,
Um,
that is such a cool point to make because for the uninitiated, combining RPA with optical character recognition, oh man, it sure looks and feels like magic. And I was like, wait a second, that just happened without a single keystroke from a human actor? Like, oh baby, now we're talking. We're cooking with gasoline. So well, how do you guys figure that out? How do you determine, hey, you know what? We're going to stick with RPA, even though generative AI is a thing. It's not really accurate enough. And we're going to instead install OCR technology and pair it with RPA so that it sure looks and feels like a generative AI, even though it's not. But at the end of the day, it solves the core problems that your customers and clients want it to solve. So you don't actually need generative AI, and you're better off with a combination of RPA and OCR. That's fascinating. I had no idea.
hmm Yeah, and I think what we always, and I'll couch that and say like it is improving significantly, right? Like in GPT-5 coming out, like this industry is changing very, very quickly, and there are definitely opportunities in our tech stack for us to leverage, large language models to improve things. But really, the lens that we look at things through, it's just customer value, right? Where is the customer value, and what approach do we need to take to continue to deliver exceptional customer value? Like we don't look at ourselves as which I think oddly for a technology company, like we don't look at ourselves as sort of having a bunch of technology and sort of figuring out what problem we can solve with it. We are orienting ourselves around the problem first. What is the problem that we solve from customers? What is the value that we deliver to customers? What is the value we want to deliver from customers?
Yeah.
And then what do we need to do? What do we need to pull out of our quiver in order to solve that problem? Our customers don't care what technology we're using. They want a solved problem.
Let me drill down super far into like the
Sure.
individual granular use case. Be as specific as you want. Endorsing a change to a policy in your management system, whatever example you want to use there. Folks, for those of you that are not familiar with Quandri at all, which I would guess is a pretty large number of you, because Jackson, we'll get into compatibility in a little bit, but
Sure.
most of the work you guys do is with applied Epic users, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main system you guys are compatible with and plugged into right now. So if you're not on Applied Epic for your agency management system, you may not be at all familiar with Quandri, and you've spent the last, I don't know, close to 20 minutes now going, James, what in the heck are you talking about? This sounds cool, it's great and everything, but I have no idea what Quandri does. Jackson, help them out. What does Quandri do in a very granular use case? Just an example.
Yeah, absolutely. So high level, as you probably gathered, intelligent automation for brokerages and agencies, right? Automating a lot of these time-consuming repetitive processes, really drilling into that. I'll talk through, one specific use case, which is really around the renewal process. So we call them, robots or agents, right? Agent-based automation, these, robots that log into your systems. They will log into your management system, so your agency management system. They or one, depending on how large your book volume is, identify all upcoming renewals, drill down into those renewals one by one, and extract all relevant data for that renewal. So that will be, last year's renewal data, this year's renewal data, coverage data, limits, deductibles, premiums, discounts, surcharges, claims information, location data, age of driver, age of vehicle, present discounts, effectively rating information, age of home, last updates, all that fun stuff. Effectively, any relevant data that's there, structured or unstructured, takes all of that data, ingests it, understands it all, and then provides back to the agent a short summary of that renewal, any major changes, dropped coverages, added coverages, premium changes, discounts that should be there that are not there, upsell or cross-sell opportunities, E&O risk in the book, things like that. Effectively, anything relevant that they need to act on to either retain the customer, decrease E&O risk in the book, increase retention rate, increase upsell, cross-sell, and save a lot of time while doing so. So that's a specific example of what the Quandri technology does.
Love it. And because you're plugged into the agency management system, you're able to access download data from Ivans. You're able to, absorb and process, I'm guessing, updated Accord apps and process the renewal in the management system, tee it up for the human actors to then deliver it to the insured and provide their commentary, record a video summary or whatever. So you're doing some of that low-end data entry, highly repeatable processes that an in-person team member or a virtual employee would be performing were it not for Quandri. Is that a fair assessment?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And really what we're trying to do is enable the people to do more and better quality work with what they're really good at, right?
Wow.
Calling customers, making decisions, upselling, cross-selling, evaluating risk. They can do more of it because they're getting better quality information and they don't have to put that together on their own. And we're also driving better segmentation through their book of who they need to call and who they don't need to call. So they can do more of it and better quality work because they have better quality information to do that work.
So basically, you took all of the virtual employee and VA companies that service agencies running Applied Epic and said, hold my beer. I'm going to show you something.
In your words, I guess, yes.
Yeah. So why would you want to pay a virtual team member to do something you can have a robot do instead? Because robots never take breaks. They do exactly what you told them to do. And if they make a mistake, it's probably because there was a gap in instruction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's still, there's definitely still a place for VAs and that type of work. Like a robot, like our technology, it's never going to do 100% of the renewals that come through, right?
Well, somebody needs to hold the robots accountable, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to make sure they don't.
Someone's got to spot check the robots.
Yeah, so they spot check, they handle the exceptions, the edge cases, et cetera. And there are, there's always going to be sort of smaller processes and edge cases that just make sense for a person to do where there's like a much higher degree of flexibility. One interesting thing, about AI is that it's still fairly dumb. Like it's really good in sort of defined use cases and purposes, but what humans are really good at is like generalized knowledge across many different things, right? So you can train AI to be like really good at certain things, and it can do those things really well. But VAs are still really helpful when you have a lot of different things at different places and have that increased level of flexibility.
I've heard from a few people that one of the biggest job titles to explode in the next 5 years is prompt engineer. someone who understands at a very deep level how to best interact with these generative AI systems and get the AI to do what we want it to do as its human overlords until the point when it becomes totally ubiquitous and the AI has a better understanding, years from now of the things that it's expected to do where minimal input is required. I'm not going to get into the whole ethical chaos thing of what happens when we get to that inflection point where AI becomes self-aware and sentient and then enslaves us. We have a Skynet Terminator situation on our hands. I definitely think that there's got to be some guardrails put in place, or else that's a very real possibility that AI may just decide at a certain point it doesn't need humanity and it tries to get rid of us. But aside from, fun little conversations that don't have anything to do with Quandri or Jackson Fregeau, I'm going to leave all of those talking points and questions for another conversation. Maybe around a couple of adult beverages and a fire somewhere at a conference sometime. Who knows?
That sounds great. I look forward to having those conversations. So
So many people
I've got a lot of
can.
opinions there too.
Oh my gosh, man! I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know what happens when we go too far down the AI pipe without enough accountability.
Hmm.
The whole concept of governance is so important. And last time I checked, you don't have any governance issues with RPA. So
That you do not.
no, absolutely love it. So man, where do we go from here? I told you ahead of time we were going to have a few biography questions, and then we're going to just take the gloves off and figure out where to go for the second part of the interview. What has your curiosity piqued right now? You are the CEO of a very innovative company, but you're also an entrepreneur. You're also a member of this industry, and I sense in you a fellow kinship, a curiosity that is never really
Mm.
satisfied. So, what has your attention right now? What are you reading? What are you seeing in our industry or in the world of RPA and automation and whatnot that has you going, hmm?
Yeah, interesting. So there's two things. One is sort of internal to Quandri, and then the other's a little different. Like the one that starts sort of external, like industry wide. I think there's so much talk about AI and automation, and like that's a big part of what we do. Um, but where I actually think there's like a much more, maybe not more interesting, but like an equally interesting and substantial opportunity for agencies is really around data. Um, when we work with agencies, we automate a lot of these manual processes, and that drives a lot of value. But there's still like there's still so much one-off work, like working on this policy and working on this policy and working on this policy, and you have to do that. But I think there's a much larger opportunity to be able to take, like, ingest that entire book of business and be able to like really understand it at a global level, and then direct like specific actions through that book. So that's something like, and Quandry sort of will dovetail into that, obviously, because like this is the space that we're in. But outside of Quandry and other companies, just the industry at large, it's just something that I don't think is being leveraged nearly as well as it could be, right? Brokerages, agencies, they're data companies, right? You have relationships with carriers and your clients. You manage those relationships and you own and process data. Um,
Yep.
and I don't think that the data side of it is nearly utilized as well as it could be. And I think there is a huge opportunity for agencies to run their businesses in a much more like systematic way through better usage of their data. So that's something that we're thinking about a lot right now and like looking at. And I think is like a huge opportunity for agencies to improve their businesses.
One of the things that I see in that space, well, two, I should say. One is reporting, or getting
Mm,
better access to critical metrics that provide quantitative information that let us draw qualitative conclusions. And that's the human element. I mean, in a nutshell, robots and generative AI and whatnot are fantastic instruments for quantitative data. But the qualitative, the subjective, the intuition, the gut feeling, the inspiration, those those feelings, those deliverables are positively human in nature. I don't know how in the world you program intuition, in gut instinct into a machine that is bound by the laws of binary computer code or quantum computing, which is a different subject entirely. There's no way to get that human qualitative information out of a machine right now. It's probably decades before we're able to do the Star Trek kind of stuff, when Data starts to feel things and, goes through all of that, stuff from, I'm sorry if you're not familiar with the Star Trek Next Generation universe. I just threw you for a loop and was like, wait, Data what? Data's a thing, but now it's a person? Yeah, sorry, it's a Star Trek thing. Forgive me if I totally lost you just then. But to your point, I think the qualitative conclusions is really where the secret sauce is. Are you familiar with Arias Analytics and their program
Yep.
Donna for agents?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I figured you probably were. When I think about just compiling data and helping human actors draw meaningful conclusions from it, Donna for agents and the team at Arias. I saw them in New Orleans at Accelerate with Vertifor just a couple of weeks ago. I think they're doing it as well as anybody is right now. I would certainly think that, as you guys are embarking on your own version of that journey, companies like Arias and products like Donna have got to be an inspiration for the sorts of stuff that you guys are trying to do as far as qualitative conclusions.
Yeah, Aureus is a great company. I've met Anurag a couple times. He's extremely smart, and I think is building a great company. Yeah, definitely inspiration. Like we look at it as there's sort of elements of that we think could be really applicable for what Quandri would do, but I think what they've carved out is like an amazing niche in where they're helping agencies. And for us on our data journey, like we see ourselves wanting to be at more of a bird's eye view level, like not because right now we are sort of acting on like the one-to-one policy relationship for the agency, but sort of going a step higher and providing and interacting with that book at a high level and providing that to management, to ownership, to executives, and then being able to trigger actions like through our intelligent agents based on that data. So you sort of have this feedback loop, right, where you have the agents in their processing, and should use a different term, agents like our robotic agents, in their processing data, understanding it, being able to like ingest that and provide reporting back. And then based on that reporting, you can then trigger actions for those agents to go back. So you have this like repetitive loop where you have like action triggering data and going back and triggering more action, which we think is pretty interesting.
Man, there's a lot of potential there. That's really cool. So you have robot agents doing things that triggers other robot agents to do more things. So you have, a daisy chain effect of your RPA processes
Exactly.
that, exponentially increases the value to the operation.
Yeah, and not just triggering other robots, right? You have, robots bring that data back, and then based on what's brought back, some of that is going to go to people, some of that will go to agents. So like based on the segmentation and sort of the understanding of that data, you want a big component of that to go to a person to evaluate, to make a phone call, to like what you said, right?
Yeah.
Understand the qualitative nature of it, which you just can't replace, but not all of that needs to be done by a person. So being able to segment what goes where.
Well, and compiling and delivering that in a cadence that the user selects, whether it's daily, weekly, biweekly, monthly, whatever. Goodness, the use cases there are limitless, right? And it's like, if I walked into the office And on Monday morning, there was a list compiled by my robots at Quandri that said, hey, we've recognized certain indicators in the following 12 accounts that let us know they probably need to hear from you individually. Like, they would probably appreciate a phone call. Or, hey, we've noticed that these people reply faster via text rather than phone, so we think that you should probably text this person instead of call them. I don't,
Mm,
just hypothetically. It's like, I imagine response
yeah.
times are captured pretty easily. So just having something as simple as, hey, this person responds faster via phone than text or email. Or, this person responds via email and they never text. So don't text them. Having that kind of information at an account level would be extremely useful.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And those types of things are what is going to become possible. I think it's thinking of like the industry as a whole, I think it's an extremely exciting time for agencies. Like I think for a long time there wasn't as much innovation as there should have been in the agency channel, and we have definitely noticed a change over the last 4 years. Like the amount of new companies, the amount of new innovation that is coming to the industry is now coming faster than it was. And I think agents are the ultimate beneficiaries of that, right? If there's more innovation and more competition among companies that innovate, that means it's going to move faster, it's going to get better, and you have to compete for agency dollars, which is a good thing for agencies. It means they get better options and more innovation. So I think it's a very, very exciting time for the channel.
Man, I couldn't agree more. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we start to land the plane here? I promised you about a 35 or 40-minute runtime, and that's right about where we're at, believe it or not. We're already there. So, any final thoughts before we get you back to your afternoon?
The I'll add one more thing for all the business owners listening. Like you mentioned, what is the stuff that you're thinking about right now? For me, it's like how to not spend all my time working, which I'm sure that a lot of your listenership can appreciate. You can probably
Yes,
appreciate. Like
absolutely.
it is hard to do, man. Really hard to do. We have we have been grinding the last like 3.5, 4 years. And now we've got a big team. We've got a good leadership team, and you know, it's one thing to say you want to sort of have a bit more balance. It's another to do it. And one of the hardest things of doing what we're doing is like balancing the personal side of it,
Yep.
and making sure that you're like taking time to rest and recharge. But
Ma-
so important for like the longevity of it.
the
And I
only
think it's
advice
something
I
that is
can I
good for
can
people to hear every once in a while. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
agree. The only advice I can give is some that I received from Brandon Smith, actually, up in
Mm,
Montana, not too far away from you there in Vancouver. You know, this was, gosh, it's almost 2 years ago now that I had this conversation with him at a conference in Phoenix, and just asking him, how in the world do you get done all the things that you get done? Because I see on his social media that he's very present with his family, he's very active with kids' sports and whatnot, but he's also, he travels 20 or 30 times a year for speaking engagements, and he's an executive in a rather large insurance agency in Montana. And I just asked him, how in the world do you keep track of it all and make sure that the main thing stays the main thing? And all he said was, you have to be, this is a direct quote, you have to be absolutely ruthless with your calendar.
mm,
And I speaking as Brandon, what he said to me was, I have to be very, very particular in what I allow to be on my schedule. And whatever that is intentionally selected. He's never on cruise control. And I've adopted that philosophy in the last 2 years. And you can ask my team, like, I get out of as many meetings as I can. If anybody else on my team is fully capable of taking a meeting, well, they're going to take that meeting. I'm not taking that meeting. It's a waste of my time if somebody on my team is equally as good at a task as I am. I was like, my hours are way more expensive than their hours. So why would I do something that they can do just as well as I can? So, being ruthless with what I allow in my calendar and delegating as many things as possible to the right people. I don't know. You're probably already doing that, but just in the off chance that you haven't put, that level in, maybe that helps you. I don't know.
yeah. I think I think you're bang on. It's something I'm learning right now, to be honest, of like what I need to be in, and what I don't need to be in, and how to really allow yourself to take that step back. And I think the one thing I've been learning with that is that it's better for you to not be there. It's also better for everybody else,
For
right? It's
you to
better for
not
the
be there.
company. Like it's better. Yeah, it's better for it's better for the people who are leading those things to be able to like step in and have that autonomy and ownership, and
Yep.
allows them to grow and scale. Like it's how your business scales, it's how people grow, and it's how you have a better quality of life. Like it's a self-perpetuating loop.
Well, and we haven't talked about leadership at all because this is a medium-sized podcast episode, and I had a lot of questions because you're doing some super cool stuff. The leadership benefits to you as co-founder and CEO when someone knows that you trust them to do something without your direct input. The intangible and tangible benefits to that person, to their team, to your company as a whole are extreme. They get better at doing something without your direct input. You ask them for a debrief and they give it to you. And then you trust them more, then they feel more confident, so they do a better
Hmm.
job next time. This wonderful positive feedback loop that started with you saying, "Man, I am totally burnt this week. Hey, can you take that meeting for me? I've got to step out for a minute." And all these positive things happen because of that. So good for you, man. I'm really proud of you. I'm excited for you that you are exiting, potentially the first biggest part of the grind. Because, I mean, founder, co founder, whatever, you and I are cut from the same cloth in that regard. You never
Hmm.
really leave the office. Even when you're at home, you're still at the office in your head. And that part is
Yeah.
something that most people will never understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always there with you. And the flip side of that is it's the most rewarding, most challenging and rewarding thing I've ever done. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's the cost associated with that, but well worth every step.
100%, man. If people want to reach out to Quandri and learn more about what you're doing, just for clarity's sake, everybody, they're not available on all the major AMSs. Right now, it's mostly Applied Epic. I'm sure you guys will be expanding to other platforms as you're able to with development resources and whatnot. What's the best way for someone to get more information and schedule a demo if they want to?
Yeah, you can go right to our website. Our website is quandri.io, Quandri.io. Should be very easy to find where to book a demo on our website, or we're not doing our job properly.
Awesome. And we're going to put all that information in the show notes, boys and girls, so you can find good people on Jackson and Jameson's team to learn more about that if you want to. And even if you don't connect with them now, then he's a great follow on LinkedIn. Jameson is as well. They get some great information out there. So definitely connect with them on. I'm guessing LinkedIn is your preferred platform, right, Jackson?
Yeah, yeah, LinkedIn is best for me.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you sharing some of your valuable time with us this afternoon, man. Check out quandri.io to learn more. And this has been another episode of the Agency Freedom Podcast. Make it a great day, boys and girls. We'll talk to you again real soon. Y'all take care.